Hello. Hello, hello, hello. It's Aurelia Davis, the educator's educator, coming to you on a Tuesday afternoon right after the Labor Day holiday. And just hope everybody had a very nice holiday. Let me situate myself a little bit. I'm in a different part of my house, so you see the picture in the back. There's a puzzle back there. I love doing puzzles, but what I never ever do is take them apart. So I glue them and I make them a wall ornament. Okay, so you see that behind me. But still getting into noticing that most schools, basically all schools, should be in place right now. But at the same time, let me digress for a minute. If this is your first time seeing me or hearing from me, my name is Aurelia Davis. I'm a retired school teacher from Chicago. I did over 30 years of experience and retired in 2012. At the same time, I also while teaching, I got I developed a love for training and teaching other teachers. I developed a love and a passion for training and teaching other teachers. My first experience for that came when I was working with, of course, student teachers coming into the building and being assigned to different ones and different individuals in different classrooms. And I found that to be very promising. And I was just so excited to be able to share with them what I was doing and some of the things that I have found out that worked for me in the classroom. And then from there, I had the opportunity to work with Chicago Public Schools. They had a mentoring program. This is where individual teachers were going, individuals were going from a one career into a second career, which would be teaching. So they were already in the classrooms, but at the same time, the mentoring was sessions, about 8 sessions, where they would have to go to a class like every week to work on parent teacher conferences. They had to work on what else they work on. We worked on transitions in the classroom, behavioral issues in the classroom, behavioral management in the classroom, classroom management, how to deliver lessons and things like that. All of those things we did. And then once I did retire, I did also have the opportunity to work with Teach for America, coming out of Dominican University, where I also did some mentoring. So my master's degree is in teacher leadership. So here I am, boom, okay, and still loving it. And especially during these times when so many educators are leaving the system, I want to be that support mechanism to keep you in the system, to let you know that it's not as hard as it looks. And from your first glance, you really just can't take that on as to what the career is going to be like. Okay. The first glance is not a good glance. Okay. But the more you delve into it and the more you delve into it and the more you see the children and wanting to help children, that's what basically motivates you to stay in the career of teaching. So, for the last couple of days and last week, I basically have been talking about lesson planning. Lesson plans drive the curriculum. Lesson plans drive learning. Those individuals are sitting in front of you waiting to be taught something that they don't know. I'll say that again. Those individuals are sitting in front of you, are ready to be taught something that they do not know. And you are the person that they're looking to be taught. Lesson plans have been in teaching forever and ever. And of course, breaking it down to the four core subjects of reading, writing, social studies, and math. Those are the four core subjects. And now those core subjects have basically broken off into about two or three other subjects for each part. But at the same time, when it comes down to it, you're teaching children reading and language arts. You're teaching them math concepts, algebra, so on and so forth. And social studies, you're teaching them about the world and the surroundings and where they live and environment. And in science, it just goes the gamut of everything, everything. That's why a lot of the STEM programs have developed. And of course, that basically brings learning into the classroom, taking it into different areas as to what a child needs to know. So, what I want to get into today for just a few minutes, just a few minutes, is the importance of lesson planning for student success. Is that the importance of lesson planning for student success? Um, I have stated before that the lesson plan is basically a guide that you use in order to or drive that truck into that classroom to teach the children something. So that guide is not rote. It's not rote to the point where you have to read it. Now we will take two and add it together. No, no, no. Let's take two bunnies. Let's take two fish and put them together. And how many animals do we have all together? So on and so forth. So you take it and you basically turn it into something that is creative so that the children will grab onto it and love it and love it. It makes them excited, to just know about it. But I have been doing some research because I'm sure things have definitely changed since 2012. And a lot of other acronyms, SEL, social emotional learning, and rigor, and all of those terms have come into the field of education. And they were not there when I was teaching. But what I'm understanding as I look these particular terms up, I'm finding that these particular terms are really no different than what we were doing back in the 90s and the 80s and so forth. They basically have just put a new name on it. They put a new name on it, and educators, you have to be very cognizant of it because the term may be new, but you may be doing already what it requires. You may already be doing what it requires, which is a good thing. So my research brought me to the title itself, the importance of lesson planning for student success. And the key word in there is student success. The key words, two words, is student success. A lesson plan is given so that a child can be successful in learning something that they don't know. Okay, a lesson plan is a guide for a child or a student to be successful in something that they don't know about. So, how you deliver it, how you present it, and that type of thing is what basically leads to student success. So, just researching a little bit, I just want to pick up a couple of things that I saw. They were saying some of the reasons nowadays why student success, while lesson plans are very, very important, it helps students and teachers understand the goals of an instructional module. Instructional module is a core group or a core subject that you're teaching. Say, for instance, social studies. Would just not say would not teach well in third grade. We had the our social studies unit was Chicago. So that could have been our instructional module or our social studies unit with Chicago. And then there were so many objectives as to what we needed to learn about the city of Chicago. So when I started teaching it, I just didn't say Chicago. I basically started from the world in Illinois, the United States and Illinois. And in Illinois, there's a city called Chicago for third graders. And we went into the history of it and who discovered it and what the people were like before these big skyscrapers appeared and those types of things. So the instructional module is something that you are aiming your objective toward in order for the children to have a lot of information about it. It also allows the teacher to translate the curriculum into learning activities. Your learning activities are your lessons. Your learning activities are your lessons. It can't always be done in one day. It may take a couple of days. It may take a couple of weeks. But at the same time, what I found out with when I was teaching is that my students, I had to find out exactly where they were. I was always interested in meeting them where they were. In other words, so if they didn't know anything about what a city was, we had to start with the definition of what a city is. And of course, I'm not going to go back and say what that is, but we just see what I'm saying. We have to go back to see what a city is. I started with vocabulary, and I tried to find out exactly where the children were as far as the knowledge of what I was going to teach. And you don't assume anything. You don't assume anything. Uh, then, they talked about aligning instructional materials. You need a lot of materials in order to teach a lesson. A lot of materials, crayons, paper, markers, visual aids, they're putting things on whiteboards and things now. Of course, back in the day, I didn't have those things. So a lot of things I did like poster sizes, and I did different things like that. We had that, I forgot what that machine was called, transparency machine. So we had a transparency machine where you would put your book on the transparency and then it would show up on the wall. That's what we had. We had laptops and no, we didn't deal with that. Then there's the assessment. After you have taught the lesson, what did you want the children to learn, and did they accomplish that? Did you accomplish them learning that particular skill or that objective? And how do you find out? You find out by giving them an assessment. You let them know by giving them an assessment. Okay. You let them know by giving them an assessment. And that assessment will prove one or two things. Either the message that you were giving through your lesson was understood and received, or either you need to delve a little bit more. If the children, if most of the children, if 70% did not get what was going on, that means you need to go back to the drawing board and basically almost start all over again to a certain extent. So the assessment is very, very important. But before I would give an assessment to my children, I would basically try to find out. We would go through the lesson at first. Let me tell you, at first I was the type of teacher. I sit there and give it and I do it and that's it. No, no. As my years of experience started to give me more, I allowed more flexibility in my classroom. I didn't feel that I didn't want to be on a deadline in order to get something done or a lesson done. I didn't want to be on a deadline. So I may start it on Monday and may not end it on till Friday. One particular lesson that I started on Monday, it may not end till Friday. And that was okay with me because the most important thing is that the children were going to learn what I was teaching them. That was more important than anything else. They needed to learn what I was teaching them and what I was giving them. So and I wanted at least 95%. And then at 5% of those students that didn't get it, I would have the opportunity to work with them one-on-one. So because they may learn differently. They may learn differently, or either they have different skills that needed to be met. And it was my responsibility to meet those particular skills. So a few more things that they stated is the assessment, but lesson planning is also very good in classroom management. I talked about that a few days ago, believing that if you have like your lessons, mapped out from Monday through Friday, and say, for instance, you start reading every morning. You start reading every morning, and we have a tendency of doing that because that seems like that's the time when the students are the most quiet and most subdued. I'm assuming most of them are still asleep, but the reading in the morning has always been a habit and something that we as educators have done. And I have even been told that some principals want to know how come you're not teaching reading in the morning. Well, I was able to break away from that for a while. I found out that usually my students came in and they were a little bit more sluggish during the daytime, Mondays and Tuesdays. By Wednesday, they were revved up. So I may change my curriculum, change my lessons from doing reading in the morning to doing reading in the afternoon just to get them to calm back down. And so I would start off with a math activity or a social studies activity and on a morning that the children seem to have a lot more energy and they're very excited about different things. And like I said before, I learned to be the type of teacher that was always thinking on my feet. I always looked for that lesson opportunity. I always looked for a lesson opportunity where I can teach the children and just drop away from what was on the paper and do something that I felt they needed to know. So the classroom management is very important because you can have a good to have you need a good classroom management in place, but at the same time, it's not a diehard Bible where you have to stay with that because the children are not going to allow you to stick to one particular thing. They're not going to allow you. They come in, especially the young ones, but even the older ones. They're human beings. Hello. They're not little robots. They're not little robots. They're human beings. And so you have to sometimes just go with the flow. Go with the flow. Our school was so flexible that teachers would meet their students at 9 o'clock, and then they would take them outside. Take them outside. Okay, let's do a nature walk or something like that. They would do science in the morning. So those types of things can happen, but at the same time, learning is still taking place, which is very important. Learning is still taking place. They said better lesson planning creates more student success. We talked about that, yeah, because you want the children to be successful, and your assessments would show that the children are successful. And then one other thing they mentioned is that teacher success. I have always felt good when about a lesson plan that I did that was successful. And what I did do is I started since I was always teaching the same grade, but even if I wasn't teaching the same grade, I would take that particular lesson or that particular concept that was taught in that particular lesson, and I would put it on a card and put it aside, because that's one less lesson that I would have to teach, that I wouldn't have to create coming into the next year. And so I found myself collecting over the years and over the weeks and over the months and over the days lessons that worked in my classroom. And they had the goal of, first of all, being exciting. They had the skills of being keeping the children active and engaged in what I was doing. So that always helped them. That always helped, and that always helped me, because that's one lesson. That's one lesson I didn't have to write again for that particular subject. So I started gathering, and before it was over, I had about 200 or 300 things that I had did, taking them through, the social studies, reading, and science and math. So I was able to capture all of those things. Um, the thing about what you also need to keep remembering uh, is that each lesson does not fit every child in your classroom. I'll say that again. Each lesson does not fit every child in your classroom. They talked about differentiated instruction, and they're making it more now that we are basically teaching to the child and not teaching to the group. Teaching to the child and not to the group. You may say that's very hard to do if you're sitting with 26 plus. I had as many as 36 in my classroom. Okay. Back in the day, yeah, we had as many as 36. So there was classroom management in place, but at the same time, what I found myself doing is basically breaking them up into small groups so that I can work with the children. But what I did more than anything else, I learned the students that I had in my room, all 36 of them. Yes, I did. And it took me a couple of weeks, but I did find out what I had in front of me. And a lot of times there was a high group, there was a middle group, and then there was a low group. And I made myself accountable for addressing those particular groups throughout the week, with the same lessons, and just basically tweaking it a little bit so that each particular group can get what I was trying to teach. So they're saying that a good lesson enables the teacher to thoughtfully address individual learning needs among the students. And that's what we're trying to do. You want to be able to tap into those children that have special needs, physically or mental, special needs that they basically have to be tapped into. And sometimes you're going to have to turn around. You may have to do a one-on-one, and there's nothing wrong with that. Or either take that child and pair him up with somebody else that is that's learning the same thing, and they would be surprised how the children want to help each other, which is very, very much needed, which it helps you at the same time. So when we finally come down to it, the lessons that we're doing in the classroom drives our instruction, and you have to be flexible enough so that those lessons that you're giving are going to be able to address the needs of the children that are sitting in front of you for that particular year. So it may change from year to year. It may change from month to month. I have found out that the children that I start out with in September are not necessarily the same students I end up with in January. So I have a tendency of putting a little bit more responsibility on them. I may give a subject and have them research and talk among themselves. And from wherever they land, that's where I may start teaching a particular lesson. And that has helped me in the past also. I don't take it for granted that they just don't know and don't want to know. But sometimes I put the responsibility on them so that they can even grasp what's trying to be taught. And I would say teachers nowadays, you have so much more that's distractions in your way. You have, technology is the biggest distraction. Technology is the biggest distraction because everything can be seen on a computer screen. Okay. But at the same time, you are that individual. And if you make yourself to the point where children can just reach out to you and grasp onto what you're saying and what you're doing, you would be surprised how successful they are. So this is it. I'll be coming back to you tomorrow with another part of tomorrow. My subject is going to be, I said today, why effective lesson planning is important. Tomorrow, we're going to talk about how to write effective lesson plans, how to write the components of a good effective lesson plan, what it entails, what it looks like. And at the same time, I have found out, even going into that it doesn't take a lot of words. As long as you meet the objectives that your principals say that you have to have in your lesson plan, then that's what's dealt with. But at the same time, you may want to put a post-it or note something on the side that where you are doing little extra things to enhance that particular piece of paper, that particular lesson. So this is Aurelia Davis, the educator's educator. If you need help with your lesson plans, go over to my website, aureliadavis.com. I'll say that again, aureliadavis.com. Click on the tab, Work with Me, and book a session, and I'll be glad to talk to you. Have a great afternoon and keep teaching.